Hello everyone, I'm John Lin, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in healthcare IT. And today we have two special guests. We have Bill Grana, he's CEO of HCTec, and also Monica Bolbjerg, and hopefully I didn't slaughter it too bad, Dr. Monica Bolbjerg. She's founder and CEO of Qure4u. Welcome Bill, welcome Monica.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, really happy to be here.
Yeah, so before we dive into the topic of virtual care, which everyone wants to talk about, Bill, how about you start off? Tell us a little bit about yourself and HCTec.
Yeah, so I am the CEO of HCTec. We're a Nashville-based IT services provider to health systems and other healthcare providers.
Awesome. And Dr. Monica, tell us about yourself and Qure4u.
So I'm the CEO and founder of Qure4u. I've been working with virtual care for 20 years.
Wow.
And Qure4u is a holistic all-in-one platform for virtual care. And we work a lot with larger provider organizations, health systems, giving them a platform to interact with their patients when they're at home.
Well, I love that you've been working on it for 20 years, right? You're not just a bandwagon fan, thanks to COVID. So, with that experience, what's something about virtual care that not enough people are talking about?
I think a lot of people are still getting to know the technologies and are thinking at it a little bit as a point solutions and not thinking of it as a flow. And we need to get to a point where you combine all the different features into workflows that work for the physicians and the patients and enables better interaction, more data exchange using technology.
Yeah. So what does that include? If you think about what is that spectrum, because I think that's what people want to know and that's what they're trying to figure out, right?
Yeah. And we work a lot with large organizations that maybe have 6, 7 different point solutions, combining that into one experience for the patient, but also one platform that the organization actually can maintain and manage, because if you have 7 different solutions for your patients and your staff, you get low adoption. But if you have one, you can get to very high adoption.
Yeah. Well, we went through this in the EHR world. They had all point solutions and they said, no, forget about it. We're going with Epic or Cerner.
Exactly.
Bill, what would you add to this? What's something that people aren't talking about?
Really, one of the lenses through which we view virtual care really is around support and the importance of support behind the technology. I think there are a lot of certainly telehealth encounters that are failed because of technical issues or maybe just technical literacy issues both on the patient and clinician side. So we see a lot of systems getting really excited about virtual care, but not really thinking about the fact that technology doesn't always work as designed, and when it doesn't, you need to have people behind to support the technology.
Yeah, and I've heard that they're a healthcare organization. They're not a tech support company, which I hear a lot. There are a lot of CEOs are like, we don't do that. That's not what we're good at. So, what pieces of virtual care do you think are not going back no matter what? And maybe how do you think reimbursement's going to change as well?
Well, I think reimbursement is a critical element to the widespread adoption, and I think we see certainly things moving in that direction to support reimbursement of all forms of virtual care. So I don't necessarily see things going backward.
Yeah. How about you, Dr. Monica? And maybe you can also talk about the role of telehealth, like video visits, right? Is that just going to be a feature, or how do you see it evolving?
No, I don't think it's going back either, but I think it's going to mature. And I think we're going to mature into something that is supportable for once, but also really one that providers and staff will find out when does it fit in and where can it add value, because it's, in my opinion, and being a physician, you need to see your patients. It's not going to be all virtual. So we'll find a way to figure out where does it fit in. And so telehealth is great, but telehealth combined with remote monitoring, telehealth combined with digital check-in, so now you can actually get everything you need prior to visit. That's where everybody needs to start thinking about it, not so much about just like a telehealth visit is the same as an office visit, because it's not.
Yeah. And do you think EHR integration is important, or how are you approaching that? I mean, as a vendor in that space, what do you think about? I think it's a challenging question.
I think it's absolutely important. The API is out there now. You can integrate with more or less any EHR out there. And so the way we look at it is that we want it to be something that is completely automated. Providers and staff work in their current environment. We make sure that this, whatever needs to go to patients or somebody outside of the organization, is automatically happening, because we use triggers in the EHR and so on to really make sure that things flow back and forth. Yeah. But having the providers and the staff stay in their current workflows and current environment is key to getting high adoption.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, to ask them to have to go to a separate application is just, would certainly inhibit adoption in a pretty significant way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you probably have firsthand experience with it, right? When you go do the tech support for them and help them, if it's not working right, you hear all the complaints. Is that?
Yeah, and they're already overloaded, right? And so
true.
they just don't have time for that friction in their day-to-day work.
And I think if I can add, the support piece is the big thing here is also to think about patient support. Right? Because one thing is to supporting the staff, but now all of a sudden the patients have problems, and how do you support that? So what we've seen working really well is that we actually take on the patient support, so that, because we now know also what's working and not working, and so we can change real quick in our system and make it even more seamless for the patient and find out, is it the button or whatever it is. And that really helps adoption as well, because now the front desk staff doesn't need to figure out how do they help Mrs. Smith with an old Android phone or whatever it is, right?
No, absolutely.
And I think patient support is an even bigger part of the equation than the clinician support. It's really started with supportive patient portals, but now the support needs are going to get a lot more complex with telehealth, with remote monitoring, other forms of virtual care. And we've got to remember that the demographics of a lot of the folks that are receiving this type of virtual care, they may not be as technically literate as folks who are younger. So I think we really have to keep that in mind. And that experience on the patient's standpoint is critical to the hospital system or the provider's brand as well.
Yeah. So let's also talk about some of the clinical side, and we'll start off with the doctor, I guess. But how do you see this virtual care? And really, I see virtual care as access to a lot of data and communication with the patient. I mean, that's to me, I think, what makes it the fundamental elements of it. But how is it going to augment the clinical insight for the patient, for the doctor providing care or care manager, whoever it is that might be helping them?
I think it's going to be a game changer, but it all depends on how good we are at presenting the data to the provider, because all of a sudden we're talking about data points for 95% of the patient's life and not just when they're together with the physician.
Doctors are scared of that, to be honest.
So, but there are a couple of things, right? Being able to kind of have a risk profile somehow, being able to kind of pull out the most important data and say, hey, did you see this, doctor? And having that as talking points with the patients when they are together. Being able to alert care teams when something goes out of range, when they're under remote monitoring. But I think even more is going to be, which makes me excited as a physician, being able to see trends, right? Because before you have a patient coming in, I have to interview the patient, figuring out, trying to guess a little bit what's actually going on at home. And now I can see trends, I can see data about what's happening at home. That is going to be really interesting to see how that will affect the care going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you'd add, Bill?
I do think the volume of data can be completely overwhelming. So I totally agree with Monica that it has to be presented in a way that's actionable and not overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you all taking the time. So if people want to learn more about HCTec, where can they go to learn?
www.hctec.com.
Awesome. And Qure4u, where can they find more info?
www.Qure4u.com, but it's Qure, the letter, number 4, the letter U.com.
Yeah, I love it. That's a creative solution. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks everyone for watching. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com.
Thank you, John.